In this video, we'll be looking at the rhombus and the square. To begin with, the rhombus is a parallelogram with four congruent sides. So all four sides are congruent. Notice it says nothing about angles. Also, pay close attention that it says it's a parallelogram. So once again, everything that's true about a parallelogram will also be true for a rhombus. Some properties of a rhombus is first off, all the sides are congruent like we discussed. Second, the diagonals are perpendicular, so they make a right angle here. Now, of course, every time you see a right angle, you know you might have to use the Pythagorean theorem. And finally, the third property is the diagonals bisect opposite angles. So this diagonal cuts the angle in half, so this piece is congruent to this piece to this piece, this is congruent to this, and this piece is congruent to this piece, because the diagonals bisect those angles. So of course, if I told you one of these angles, you could find the 90 and the other one here. So as a review, all properties of a parallelogram are also true for a rhombus. The opposite sides are parallel and congruent. Opposite angles are congruent. Consecutive angles are supplementary. And the diagonals bisect each other. All right, the square is the last special parallelogram we're going to look at. A square is a parallelogram with four right angles and four congruent sides. In other words, it's a rectangle, a parallelogram, and a rhombus all in one, just like this. So once again, as kind of a review, like we just talked about the properties of a square, all properties of a parallelogram, all properties of a rectangle, all properties of a rhombus. So in other words, if I have the square, the diagonals are going to be congruent because it's a rectangle, but the diagonals will also be perpendicular because it's a rhombus. The diagonals will be bisected, which if you cut a 90 in half, you get 45. So you can see you can do lots of things with a square. So let's try some practice problems. For each of these, I would advise pausing and trying on your own to see if you understand the concept. Angle HRB is 40 degrees. And this is what shape first off? Well, we know it's a rhombus because the sides are congruent. So if HRB is 40, we know that this is going to be 90 because that's one of the properties of a rhombus. So triangle adds up to 180, so 180 minus 90 minus 40 gives you 50. Also, you know that the diagonals bisect the opposite angle. So if this is 40, this is also 40. And if this is 50, this is also 50. So angle OBH, well, that's in the middle, so it's going to be 90. Angle MRO, 40 degrees. And angle BMO, well, that'll be the same because of alternate angles, it'll be 50 and 50. All right, so once again, be pausing this and try it on your own to see if you remember the concept. So rhomb is a rhombus. So we know that these angles are 90 degrees. RH will be 15 because all sides are congruent in a rhombus. Now we want to know what BH is. This piece here, so X. Notice the right triangle. So 9 squared plus X squared equals 15 squared, Pythagorean theorem. 81 plus X squared equals 225. Subtract the 81. So X squared equals 144 and square root it, so X equals 12. So BH is 12. Once again, we have a rhombus, but be careful with this one when you try it, because there's a little trick with it. So it's MRH, that's 3x plus 14. So all of this is 3x plus 14. ROH down here is 49, which because it's a rhombus will make this 49. So it makes this 49 and this 49. So 3x plus 14 will equal 49 plus 49 because it's the whole angle. So 3x plus 14 equals 98. Subtract the 14. 3x equals 84. And finally divide by 3. So x equals 28. Now RMH will be right here. So if that's 90 and that's 49, you subtract from 180 to get 41 degrees. Now we have ABCD, that's a square. So what's going to be true about these two sides? Well, they're going to be congruent because if it's a square, it's also a rhombus. So subtract x. So 1 equals 4x minus 9. Add the 9. So 10 equals 4x. And divide by 4. So x equals 2.5. So if you plug in 2.5, you get 3.5 for each side. Do that 4 times, and you get 14 is the perimeter. All right, finally, sorry, we'll look at this picture here if ABCD is a square. So if it's a square, it's a rhombus, so all these angles are 90 in the middle. If it's a square, it's also a rectangle, so the diagonals are congruent to each other, so 6 and 6. And if it's a square, it's a parallelogram. Sorry, it's true, it is a parallelogram, but it's also a rhombus again, which means it cuts the 90-degree angle, because it's a rectangle, in half to 45 and 45. So here we have a 45, 45, 90 triangle, if you remember this topic. And it looks like we're being given the 45 side of 6. So how do you go from 45 to 90? Multiply by root 2. So CB will be 12. BD will be the same as this side, so 6 root 2. Angle ABD will be 90, and ACB will be 45 degrees, 45. The last thing I want you to notice is this picture. We've learned about quadrilaterals, and parallelograms are a part of those. Inside the parallelograms, you have rectangles and rhombi. And if it's both a rectangle and a rhombus, then it's also a square. So every square is both a rectangle and a rhombus. Make sure you understand that. Please do your homework, and thanks for watching.